All right, everybody, welcome to our next lesson here. This is the start of World War One. This is for our unit or the unit World War One. So our objectives and standards to understand how the world was at the brink of war and to analyze the main cause of World War One. So please take a moment there to read over the standards. Okay, and our desired result, what were the early stages of World War One? So war comes to the world. Typically, historians have identified four main reasons for the start of World War One: nationalism, imperialism, militarism, and the alliance system. So nationalism. So we know that nationalism, we've discussed this already in class, that nationalism is believing that your country is the best and that you're, going to take over the world and that, you're the best example for the world to follow as an example. So the view of nationalism is devotion to one's country and its interests. But nationalism can be good in building support and unity for your country, but can also lead to competition and rivalries among nations. So one of these things that happened was that many European nations became fearful of the power of Germany in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Ethnic groups also looked for independence from stronger nations and hoped that others would assist their goal. The protector of the Slavic people in Europe, such as the Serbs, was seen as Russia. So we'll talk about Serbia in a little bit here. Now, Serbia had been independent, but millions lived under the control of Austria-Hungary, and Russia and Austria-Hungary were rivals for control of Serbia. Again, trying to expand your control as a country, and again, we'll talk about Serbia here in a little bit. So imperialism, another cause of World War I. During the past centuries, Europe had been building strong empires around the world. We talked about Africa and Asia, and even the United States with the imperialistic powers going on. They had been slow and in expanding their political and economic control around the world, and European imperial powers were looking for raw materials and markets for goods from colonies. Many European nations, including France, Germany, and England, are going to compete for these different regions around the world, which we talked about before. So here's a map of imperialism in the modern world in 1900. You can kind of see the colors here and the color code from the map there of where different European powers and other countries had control around the world. So take a moment there to look at that map. Okay. Militarism, cause of World War I. The cost of an empire is expensive to build and defend. Increases in imperialism and nationalism resulted in increased military spending. Countries wanted a stronger military than a potential enemy, so many implemented a policy of militarism. Development of armed forces as a tool for diplomacy is known as militarism. Germany had the strongest military by 1890. The British had the strongest naval forces, but became nervous when the German Emperor, or Kaiser, Wilhelm II, decided to compete with the British Navy. You can see a picture of him there. Other countries, including the US, joined the race to complete the naval arms race. So our last kind of cause here for World War I is the alliance system. So there were two major defense alliances in Europe by 1907. Later known as the Allies, the Triple Entente were made up of Great Britain, France, and Russia, and some others as well. It would later include the United States and Japan. Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire, and Italy were part of the Triple Alliance. They would become known as the Central Powers because they were typically located in the central part of Europe. Both groups served as international security for their allies, so they sought to defend their allies and their interests around the world. Here's a map that kind of shows you, for Europe at least, where these allied countries were, where these central powers were, and also the more neutral countries. You can take a moment to look over that. You might be looking at Italy and wondering why Italy is in orange in the Allies. That's because Italy will actually join the Allies in 1915. So Serbia. Europeans had had interest in the Balkans region of Europe, where there were many different ethnicities and a lot of different competition between different countries. A rail link was wanted by Germany and access to the Mediterranean Sea by the Russians. So they're all, again, all competing for this region known as the Balkans. Now, Serbians were accused of subverting or trying to kind of stop Austria-Hungary and their power in Bosnia, which Austria-Hungary had taken control of Bosnia in 1878. In June of 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, this gentleman right here, sitting in the car with the hat, shaking hands, and his wife were visiting Sarajevo in Bosnia. He was the heir to the Austrian-Hungarian throne. He and his wife Sophie were visiting the capital of Bosnia. As they rode in the car, or as they were getting ready to ride through the city, they were assassinated by Serbian nationalist Gavrilo Princip. So they're in the car here. Actually, this picture was taken maybe moments before they were actually assassinated. So this is one of the last pictures of these two. Like we said, as they were going through this parade here. Gavrilo Princip was a member of the Black Hand, which was an organization that promoted Serbian nationalism, again, because Serbia wanted to be free of Austrian-Hungarian rule, so that's why he assassinated both these people here. So this is kind of the spark, or the final event that sets off World War I. So here you have a picture of Gavrilo Princip, and I believe I'm saying his name properly. I apologize if I'm not. So on July 28, 1914, Austria-Hungary declared war against Serbia because of the actions Princip had done. And because of the alliance system, nation after nation will be pulled into the war, okay? Germany will declare war on Russia on August 1st, 1914, because Russia was trying to defend Serbia, and Russia was going to attack Austria-Hungary, so Germany turned around and declared war on Russia. Germany then also declared war on Russia's ally France, and Great Britain finally decides to declare war on Germany after Germany decides to invade Belgium. So again, all these different elements and the final event of the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand kick off what will become known as the Great War, or later become known as World War I. So at this point, World War I has begun, and we will start talking about that, the fighting and the events of World War I next week. All right, so I hope you have a great rest of your day or evening. Let me know of any questions, and I'll talk to you soon. Fighting during the war. Central powers, Austria-Hungary, Germany, Bulgaria, and the Ottoman Empire eventually. Allied powers, Great Britain, Serbia, France, Russia, and later the United States, Italy, and Japan. German forces pushed through Belgium and into France toward, German forces pushed through Belgium and into France towards Paris. In September 1914, British and French forces stopped the German advances near the Marne River. The First Battle of the Marne had both sides digging trenches and struggling for control of land. Eventually, trench warfare spread across Europe and led to the deaths of millions. The deadliest was along what was known as the Western Front between France and Germany. So here I have, or here you can see a picture of what fighting was like during World War I with trench warfare. You can see some of the trenches here. I'm trying to highlight here for you, with the line. You can see no man's land, which was just kind of muddy, a lot of death and destruction and things like that over here. I'm circling it for you now. You can also see the communication trench down this way here, the company HQ or headquarters dugout, also the support trench and things like that. But again, there was a lot of fighting and death and destruction in these areas, and just muddy, deadly fighting with barbed wire and other deadly weapons and things like that as well. Weapons and trench warfare. Many believed the war would have been short, but the fighting dragged on for years. A major cause of the death and destruction were the new weapons and technologies. Poison gas, airplanes, tanks, and other deadly weapons caused the deaths of millions. And I have a quick little personal connection or a story from my family history to share with you. My grandmother had some uncles, and one of her uncles Not sure how many of them actually served in World War I, but one of her uncles was actually a victim of a poison gas attack while fighting in World War I. Sorry, and he actually dealt with that for the rest of his life. Even though he survived the attack, he had really bad coughing fits and things like that from a result of that. Soldiers also had to deal with the threats of trench warfare, such as trench foot, rats, and diseases. Casualties, or soldiers killed, wounded, or missing, grew quickly in the early months of the war. The end of the war saw casualties in the millions. Okay, so our closure. What were the early stages of World War I? Think about some of the reasons that World War I happened, some of the causes. Also think about some of the early stages of the conflict and of the war, and think about some of the fighting and weapons and technologies as well. All right, and that'll help you answer your questions. Please try your best on the questions that follow, and let me know if you have any questions or comments. And I hope you have a great rest of your day or night, and I hope to talk to you all soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.